Thanks, Brian. Good afternoon. Welcome to Let's Talk Midtown. I'm Kevin Green with the Midtown Alliance. We have allotted 45 minutes for this evening's conversation, and so we're going to move things along pretty briskly. Appreciate you joining us. Our objectives this afternoon are quite simply to let you know what we're up to and to answer your questions. And at the end, we'd like to get your feedback, including how you'd like to be involved and engaged in our work. So look for that post webinar survey that's going to come your way as soon as the webinar concludes. So we're going to structure the next 45 minutes around your questions, and we got a lot of questions when people registered, so we appreciate you doing that. If we don't get to some questions, we will email you a specific response. We did that last time, and I think we emailed 40, specific emails to people answering their questions that we didn't quite get to, or we didn't know if we got to completely enough. If you have additional questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them as time allows. So what are we up to? In sum, we're advancing about $40 million of fully funded capital projects. We've made some recent progress with the city in terms of some delays, and we can touch on that today. Transportation projects, parks, plazas, activations. Recently kicked off an artist in residence program in Midtown where property owners are making space available for local artists. Lauren is going to cover that. We're looking at a whole lot of development happening. Carl is going to cover that. Our Midtown Public Safety Program is currently on the streets about 750 hours per week. In terms of added level of public safety. And I will say that in unusual times like today, with police ranks at APD somewhat diminished, it's really great to have a Midtown Blue program on the job every day. And then our Midtown Green program on the ground every day as well. We're hiring. So we're going to put a link to our career center in the chat, but we're hiring public safety officers. We're hiring for additional green team members. We are hiring a new director of operations for our green team. Kyle Guess, who's been here for about the last 8 years, has left to become the Public Works Commissioner for a small city in Georgia. So we're looking to fill his shoes. And then we've got a new position for a program manager for programming and activation as we look to turn up the wow in 2022. So if you know of anybody you think would be qualified or interested, please send them a link to our career page. As we approached 2022, we were kind of searching for a single word to capture the spirit of where things are. And we think it is quite simply this: onward. People talk a lot about us getting back to normal, and as we talked about it as a team, going back to something didn't really seem like a rallying cry. So we want to be a place that's moving forward to become an even better place. And so onward, and I guess you'd say upward given the skyline that we'll talk about, but we're pretty fired up. And if you just think about where we are as a community, as a country, we've got a wildly successful vaccine that was developed in record time, and we've got a Delta variant with numbers moving rapidly in the right direction. We just need to stay on and remain vigilant. Good things are happening. On the employment front, we were at a governor's announcement earlier today at CODA, where Cisco agreed to, announced that they will be creating 700 new jobs and taking the remaining office space at CODA. Last week, you probably saw Visa announced 1,000 jobs in what will be the former Norfolk Southern headquarters at 15th Street. We ran the numbers, about 3,000 new jobs announced in 1 square mile of Midtown since the beginning of the year. That's almost 30,000 new jobs in 1 square mile of our city since 2015, with more companies that are planting their flags. Google taking 19 floors, 1105, Microsoft at Atlantic Yards. Anthem, Norfolk Southern will cut the ribbon on their headquarters next month. So far this year, close to 2 million square feet of office has been delivered in Midtown so far this year. More than 500 residential units, close to 600 new hotel rooms. That is a tremendous amount of activity. And it's that mix of residents and workers and street level retailers and attractions that is really the key differentiator for Midtown and really the key to creating a healthy and vibrant place. So that's what makes our district work. So onward. We're looking for an increasing number of employers to bring more people back to the office. Our office occupancy is somewhere in the around 30% range right now. It tracked up before the 4th of July and then went down as the Delta numbers increased, and now it's on the way back up. Different companies are on different timelines. We also know that bringing more people back to these offices is critical to supporting our street level businesses and restaurants. So our team created this return to the office guide in-house, and we'll put a link to it in the chat. It's a really cool guide that talks about what we've been up to in Midtown while some people may not have been here, and what to look forward to when you get back. Any way you look at it, the remainder of this year and into next year will be a time of transition as we get back to full strength. And of course, our city is now officially, I guess, in the midst of an election with early voting that started yesterday. We've got a link to early voting locations, including the Ponce Library, that'll be in the chat. You can vote early starting yesterday. We got a mayoral election, council president. At least 6 of 15 city council seats will definitely turn over. So elections November 2nd and likely runoff happening on the 30th. Of the council seats that'll turn over in the core of Midtown, District 2 is Amir. He is running unopposed. District 3 is Antonio Brown, who's running for mayor. That district will have a new council member, and Jennifer Ide will not be running for re-election for District 6. So there's another one covering Midtown that will be a new council member. So please do get informed and vote. There have been a lot of debates, lots of forums. We are part of the Committee for a Better Atlanta. And so if you'd like to see the candidate scoring and some of the questionnaires that were done as a part of that process, that is a number of business organizations, nonprofits, and other civic leaders. There'll be a link to the Committee for Better Atlanta's work in the chat as well. There's Atlanta's finest going by, as you can hear over the mic. Public safety, as if on cue, is obviously an issue that has and will continue to dominate. It's also a large number of the questions that you all asked when you signed up, so we'll start there. I just pulled APD crime stats for week 40, and they're accessible on the web as well, very easy, but this is the week ending October 2nd. City of Atlanta, just as a snapshot in time, total crime is up about 10% year over year, but crime so far in 2021 is actually down 13% compared to 2019. We all know crime is not just an issue in Atlanta. There's been a spate of articles that have come out recently, and often it's because the final FBI crime numbers don't come out until the fall for the preceding year. So they come out around September. You might have seen an article on the AJC a couple of weeks ago with the headline, "Violent crime in US rises for the first time in 4 years in 2020." And really underscoring that it's an issue not just in Atlanta, and it's not just a big city issue. It's happening in smaller towns, Columbus, LaGrange, Albany. But one fact that kind of stood out in that article I'll mention, and that is your chances of being a victim of a violent crime in Atlanta is less than in the rest of the state of Georgia. So the national average for 100,000 people is 400 incidents, violent crime incidents for 100,000. In Georgia, it's 399, just barely below the average. And in Atlanta, it's 387, which says if your goal is to be safe from violent crime within the state of Georgia, move to Atlanta, which certainly runs counter to the prevailing narrative. And speaking of that narrative, one thing that we've been looking at just in terms of context is what's happened trend-wise with crime in the last 30 years. I mean, I moved to the city of Atlanta in 1986. So this is a kind of a shocker for people. Violent crime is down almost 80% since 1990 in the city of Atlanta. And that was a time when the city had probably 25% to a third fewer residents. I lived here in 1990. I don't remember thinking about crime as being out of control. Property crime down similarly about 70%. So that's just general context. I mean, crime went down across cities across the country. Atlanta was no exception, but actually Atlanta saw further declines in violent crime than other cities across the United States. So not trying to make an excuse for anything that happens, I just think context sometimes is helpful. At the risk of going down a rabbit hole, one of the questions that we got when people signed up was, has Midtown explored the possibility of joining Buckhead in their stance to fight crime in the community? And the answer is no, we're not joining Buckhead. And, you know, I think it's worth touching on the Buckhead Secession issue just very briefly, because the facts don't always match the narrative that's being pushed. As I hear the narrative in Buckhead, they contend that they're bearing an outsized amount of violent crime. But as of October 2nd, Buckhead is about 20% of the city's residential population and about 10% of the city's violent crime. In other words, Buckhead has about half of the violent crime as in the city as a whole. Zone 2, which is Buckhead, has the least violent crime of any zone in the city. So I just beware of people with an agenda that are exaggerating facts and then peddling cityhood as a fix-all. In terms of this Buckhead secession issue, if it gets through the General Assembly, which I don't think it will, hope it doesn't. If it does and goes before voters in November of 2022, it would be really unusual in the extreme. This doesn't happen where cities split in half and become another city. It's pretty infuriating that someone just draws a Sharpie and essentially everything north of the Amtrak station at the Peachtree Bridge gets lopped off along with 40% of the local tax base. And voters impacted, like us in Midtown and elsewhere, don't even get a say. Businesses impacted don't get a say. In other cities, all city voters get to vote before a city splits, or a city council gets to vote. But that's a process that proponents are trying to sidestep here. So to me, it's a huge existential threat, not only to the city, but to the state of Georgia. It'd be catastrophic for all concerned, and it would be permanent and frankly irreparable. This is one to pay attention to. So as events bear out, please do pay attention. Crime in Midtown. We are now doing a monthly summary of things that we think people ought to be aware of in terms of crime. And we put a link in the chat, and it's also a document that's just 3 pages, and it's attached to this webinar. So please check it out. In sum, about 5% of all criminal incidents in Midtown are violent crime. That's a total of about 59 incidents since January the 1st. Most of these incidents involve people that know each other, whether it's a domestic conflict or an altercation that escalates. Your chances of being a victim of a violent crime in Midtown remain exceptionally small. In a district that attracts about 45,000 people per day, even with reduced office numbers, year to date, there have been 24 violent crimes that were stranger on stranger. And about 80% of those stranger on stranger crimes occurred between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Notably, we've seen a marked decrease in even the small number of violent crime in Midtown over the last 4 months. In the first 5 months of 2021, we had 20 pedestrian robberies. In the last 4 months, we've had 4. In the first 5 months of 2021, we had 29 aggravated assaults. In the last 4 months, we've had 4, and we've had none in the last month. So obviously, crime, big issue. Next mayor's got a lot of trust to rebuild in terms of law enforcement and communities. Our police force numbers are diminished, which is why it's great to have a program like Midtown Blue. Citywide arrests are down, not surprisingly, down about 25% year to date compared to 2020, down about 42% compared to 2019. What can you do? Stay vigilant. Call Midtown Blue if you see an issue in addition to 911. Next time you see an APD officer, tell them you appreciate them and appreciate their service. That goes a long way. being a police officer is tough under the best of circumstances, and these are not the best of circumstances. Other questions we got were around property crime, particularly car break-ins. Car break-ins are up 88% in Midtown year over year. It is confounding. It can often be a small number of individuals that are hitting a bunch of cars in a night. Don't leave valuables visible. Stolen vehicles up 150% so far this year. We have had 276 vehicles stolen in Midtown since January 1st. 67% of those vehicles, that is a little over 2/3, had the keys in them or were actually running at the time of the theft. So we've talked about before, a lot of this involves food service, DoorDash, other people stopping to pick things up out of a retailer or a restaurant. We've written literally thousands of tickets for illegal parking and warnings. This is a vexing problem and no easy solutions here. Rest of this stuff is going to be in the highlight. We'll cover a couple other things when we get to some other additional questions. Changing gears for a moment, we were asked to give an update on all of our transportation and capital projects. As mentioned up top, we've got about $40 million worth of fully funded projects. We have expressed pretty considerable frustration that actually was in the newspapers about our inability to get through city approvals and procurement. Basically unnecessary delays that were costing us money, increasing project costs, keeping us all from benefiting from these completed projects. As a CID, we really function as an implementation arm for the city, particularly as we're doing things in the public right of way. And we want to play a more active role and have faster turnaround from the city on plan approvals and handle our own procurement. So essentially what we were arguing for is to get as much autonomy as possible in executing the projects that we're frankly in charge of delivering. I'm pleased to announce that we've had some very productive conversations with the administration. They are now in agreement drafting legislation to introduce at the November 1st City Council meeting to legislate these issues where we will have greater autonomy, and in addition to being able to procure our own projects. So that is a positive development. It can't happen fast enough. We are now budgeting for about $10 million of capital project spending in 2022, which will be wonderful. Meanwhile, we've got some things that are under construction. Commercial Row Commons is one of them. This is a project at Peachtree Place and Peachtree Street. This is what it looks like in construction mode. New public space intersection will be aligned where it actually lines up across Peachtree Street. We're burying utilities, putting art in the plaza, including a large sculpture, new median, new sidewalks. It's about a $1.2 million project, and it'll look like this when it's done. It's 100% MID funded, and so that is underway now. 15th Street Arts District Plaza is also under construction. Just punch out stuff at this point. Significant plaza enhancements, new landscape, hardscape, seating elements, construction either has wrapped or will wrap in the next day or so. We also relocated the Sabine Woman here, thanks to North American Properties giving it to us. So this is the finished rendering, and I think the finished product will look a lot like that when we get the plantings put in. And across the street, very soon we'll be kicking off plaza enhancements on the Colony Square side, and they'll look like this. Again, more places for people to sit and hang out and come together. Next up, 10th Street Park. This is in partnership with Dewberry. This is not a permanent park, but this is a temporary park. Significant improvement for a relatively modest $350,000 expenditure. We've been waiting a year for a sinkhole to get fixed. I'm looking out my window at it right now. It is now fixed. We're working with the contractor who we will hope will hold their construction prices, and we should be under construction on this project late this year, early next at the latest. So that's exciting. Art Walk. Phase 1 is between 10th and 11th Street in partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. This is that plaza that runs north along what is Peachtree Walk. It's about a $3.8 million project. We're working to value engineer some bids that we got in, and we'll look to have this under construction shortly as well. Next slide is parklets. As part of the quick build that the city has done to create bike lanes along West Peachtree or Spring and soon to be West Peachtree, we sort of orphaned some parking spaces. And so we're building parklets to activate these parking spaces for people. And I think there are 16 of them altogether. Whiting Turner Construction Company has agreed to fund and build the first ones. We're completing those agreements right now, so we'll get those under construction soon. And then meanwhile, we've just planted 50 rectangular street planters to create a buffer on 2 sections of Spring Street where the curb extensions and the utility poles didn't allow bike lanes to hug the curb. So this is Peachtree Place to 8th and 4th to 3rd. So work plan highlights, we're budgeting about $10 million to advance transportation projects, as I mentioned. We're looking to beef up our Midtown Blue program a bit with a particular emphasis on some homeless outreach that we'll talk about. We're looking to do more activations that can be experienced near term. And I guess you'd kind of encapsulate 2022 in 4 words, and that's crank up the wow. Crank up the wow. There's a lot we can't control in this world, but we can shape this urban experience we call Midtown, and regardless of what happens as a district, we're going to be better off for it. So, you know, one thing that's been made clear to all of us, I think, over the last 20 months is that our connections with other people are crucial to our happiness and fulfillment, as well as our physical and mental health, and that, you know, creating positive, unexpected experiences can change people's outlook on the day and change people's outlook on the place. And so, you know, little things become big things. So look for us to crank up the wow and find new opportunities for people to come together in meaningful ways. And we're going to ask for your ideas on that as well. Meanwhile, you know, amenities are taking on increased importance. I've talked to the new prospective owners of the building we're in earlier today, and we're seeing, you know, more office buildings, for example, putting amenities on the ground floor. So this is what's happening outside of Norfolk Southern. Public plaza that they created, the one previously, I guess, was that plaza outside of 675 West Peachtree. Yeah, which is recently opened. Not anybody in there yet, but those are fully vacant office buildings right now. And then lastly, Bank of America Plaza is doing major renovations right there at Ponce and Peachtree. And so what's going to be needed is programming for all of the above, including the public spaces that we're building out. So we got a grab bag of questions. I'll hit 2 of them real quick, and then we'll move to Carl with new development. Streetlights. We have a number of outages. We've had about 100 streetlights repaired earlier this year, which is a lot to happen in a concentrated period of time. We've still got 209 streetlights that are out. And currently those outages have an average of 312 days of being dark. So we've got them all identified, categorized, and we're in constant contact with the city, working with the ATL DOT. If you want to and you see an outage, let us know about it. Chances are we've already got it on our list, but they do happen all the time. A lot of them happen due to construction activities. Call 311. It doesn't hurt to have more people calling about these. And let's see, homeless. What is being done to control homeless was one question, and what's being done about people hanging out, particularly outside the QT. First, you know, I think everybody knows it's not illegal to hang out. It's not illegal to be homeless. We can only get involved when things are done that are against the law. It's a city and all of its complicated glory. Most of the time, our Midtown Blue team is looking for voluntary compliance, but when we see people that are breaking the law, we take action, as does APD. We just did a homeless count, I guess, 3 weeks ago. Well, not even 3 weeks ago. There are 49 homeless people that we counted at our point in time count. That's recognizing that's sort of a snapshot in time. Last time, 1 year ago, when we did the homeless count, I think it was 74. So it does not appear that the number of homeless in Midtown is going up. Services seem to be on the increase. PAD, the Policing Alternatives Division, has come on strong, and we're also looking at a potential partnership in 2022 with In-Town Collaborative Ministries to have a full-time homeless outreach coordinator working with our unsheltered population. So more on that, but let me pitch to Carl so we can get through new development, and then Lauren will hit our Heart of the Arts program, and then we'll get back to some questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, speaking of WOW, there are a lot of good actions going on here in Midtown right now in terms of celebrating new openings and continuing projects that we've reviewed at our Development Review Committee. Let me highlight some of those for you to start off. First off, you see on the left-hand side, Anthem's headquarters, which has been developed by Portman, and they are welcoming folks into the office. I think they're one of the ones that are slowly welcoming their workforce in, but that is, they have their COs and they're moving forward. On the right-hand side, as Kevin showed before, Norfolk Southern, which was developed by Cousins, does expect to receive people in their headquarters in the coming months, and we do certainly appreciate their art-infused public plaza. Moving on, we have the just opened last week dual hotel that is the Marriott Courtyard and is the Westin Element. They just opened up their doors to the public last week. And on the right-hand side, you see Here Atlanta, which is now welcoming new students in their project at 699 Spring Street. Projects that we've seen recently at our DRC, our Development Review Committee of Midtown, includes Middle Street Partners at 1081 Juniper, which you see on the left. Those two towers will be on the old Joe's on Juniper and the Einstein site. It's got 470 new units and over 9,000 square feet of retail. On the right-hand side is the location along 10th Street between the fire station and Blue Med Spa, which would be a new Moderna tower with 345 new residential units and 4,000 square feet of retail. Moving forward, at the corner of 6th and Peachtree on the left is Property Markets Group out of Miami. They presented plans for a true mixed-use tower with 480 plus residential units, about nearly 80,000 square feet of office, and nearly 16,000 square feet of ground floor retail fronting on Peachtree in the center portion of our district. On the right, you'll see JPX's new tower at 1405 Spring Street. That's up at 18th Street in the north part of our district, which our DRC reviewed last month, which will offer another 325 residential units. And just yesterday, our DRC members reviewed one new, expansion. If you can go to the next slide. This is the new fellowship hall, which would increase the size of First Presbyterian Church at the corner of 16th and Peachtree by about 5,500 square feet. So we've seen a lot of WOW just in the last few months at our Development Review Committee, and a lot of WOW with new openings here in our district. Furthermore, let me say one common question that we get on development is what's going on with some stalled projects that we have, most notably Campanile and the old Opus site. I can tell you that we're as concerned as you are, but the city has very little leverage in regards to sites if they are secure. And in this case, both sites have been deemed by the city as secure and at least safe along the public rights of way. So we'll continue our best efforts, but there's very little leverage that can be done from the city's perspective to goad those developers into moving forward. And with that, I'll pass it on to Lauren, who can speak to a lot of cool items that she's handling in art and activation.
Thank you, Carl. Hey, Midtown, good to be with you guys this evening. The art and activation team is truly in full throttle right now, but I'm going to spend my limited time with you tonight to give you some updates on our Heart of the Arts program, most notably the Artist in Residency program, which has officially launched. So we are pleased to share that we have invited 6 artists to move their practices and business operations to Midtown. And each of these artists has been given a year of free studio space by our founding partners and host sites. So that's Portman Holdings, Data Bank, Atlanta History Center, and Dewberry Foundation. Brian, if you'll hit the next slide, please. So we can give a big shout out and thanks to these partners without whom this program simply would not be possible. We're really proud of the innovative partnership that we are forging with each of these 4 and really excited for what that means for having more art and arts opportunities in our district, because by making physical space for artists to work in our district, we're lowering the barriers for Atlanta's creative economy to be a part of our district here. And that also means more opportunities for the Midtown community to engage with those artists and with the creative practice. So we invite you to please be on the lookout for public displays of these artists' work. We've got 2 of the studios here, Jamal Barber and Jasmine Nicole Williams, where you can actually see their artwork in the storefront installations. And then we've also been working to install some really cool installations on the CODA campus. And so, fun fact, actually, we knew that Portman was courting a pretty big potential tenant, announced today as Cisco. And so, although we didn't know who it was at the time, we worked with the Portman team and the artist to get all of these installations in place in time for some important site visits. So we're really proud of our role in helping Portman make their beautiful building look as good as possible, and we're excited now for the rest of the community to be able to view these works on display. The installation on the left by Lillian Blades is actually in their lobby and visible from the West Peachtree Street sidewalk. So this is just the beginning of public artwork that will come online for you to view and enjoy. We are also working with the artists to highlight their work on banners and other graphics that we'll be rolling out along the sidewalk very soon. I also invite you to stay tuned for community events. We hosted our very first district-wide studio crawl on October 2nd in conjunction with the Elevate Atlanta Festival. We're really happy with the attendance we had across all sites and the engagement with the surrounding community. So thanks to any of you who came out for that. But this was really just our first public kickoff of what will be a full program of events and activities. So please stay tuned for more opportunities to engage with these artists, their work, and their new spaces in the month ahead. We're looking into things like more studio tours, a studio sale, artist workshops, potentially artist talks. So we're really excited to kind of get creative in the new programming that we'll bring to the rest of the community. So please be on the lookout for that. And one special plug for a kind of unique opportunity you can see on the left, Boyan again has turned her studio into an immersive installation called The Science of Happiness. And the augmented reality goggles she's wearing is maybe Atlanta's best new spa. So there's going to be a really great variety of arts opportunities and experiences coming your way. So yeah, please stay tuned. Thanks.
The Science of Happiness. Wow, that is a wow. We have got 9 minutes left, and we wanted to try and cover some additional questions. I did see a question in the chat about apparently the 30-year crime trend graph that we showed was cut off. That graph is also attached to our monthly public safety summary, and that is attached to this webinar, and also we put a link in the chat, so you can see that there. Sorry about that. We had a question about vehicle speeds in Midtown, and frankly, automobiles traveling at a speed that makes it unsafe to, or less safe, I should say, to walk and bike and whatnot. And what are our thoughts on a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit? Our thoughts are we would be fully in favor of a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in Midtown. A lot of streets we don't control because they're state right away. GDOT controls, for example, West Peach, Spring, Peachtree, North Avenue, or sections of those, particularly on the north-south streets north of 14th Street. And, you know, a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is only as good as its enforcement. And speed limits are not often enforced, particularly when you've got as many different calls on policing as you do today. So our really strategy is to handle vehicle speeds by design. In other words, you know, making some of these corners not as rounded, so vehicles have to slow down before they make a sweeping right turn, or shortening also shortening the crossing distance for pedestrians, narrowing lanes, because regardless of what a speed limit sign says, if you're looking at a wide, straight street like so many of these north-south streets we got, a lot of people are going to drive too fast. And so we're going to try and get a lot of these through design, including some limited road repurposing where we create barrier-separated lanes for alternative vehicles. We got questions about construction sites blocking pedestrian access that are not ADA compliant. If you've got a particular question about a construction site, please do let us know and just call Midtown Blue and put this number on your speed dial, 404-817-0500. Chances are we know about it. If there is a sidewalk closure or a lane closure, chances are it has a City of Atlanta permit. We check on every one, and the city has gotten a much better job of handling these things through permits. Once that temporary permit expires, the structure is to be built. But if you've got a question about a sidewalk or a road closure or a non-ADA compliant condition, please do let us know. And if we don't know about it, we'll make note of it. Graffiti, we get it when we see it. I think we've done a pretty good job. I will say, and there's another question about Sunday trash pickup. We are short-staffed on our green team, which is why we're hiring. We're down to one person on a weekend crew working 8 hours Saturday and 8 hours Sunday. So they get to as much as they can. I think we should be at a full staff in a month or so. But in the meantime, help us out if you don't mind. You know, if you see something, grab it. I walk around right now with a pick stick every time I walk in Midtown, and it makes it pretty easy just to pick up trash and then deposit it in the receptacle at the end of the next sidewalk. Ask for an update on the Midtown Connector project. This is a project that is a very ambitious project that would essentially put a lid over the connector from North Avenue to 10th Street, and then have a set of parallel collector distributors that take some of the local traffic off the connector on the north and south sides along Williams Street and Techwood. A very ambitious project, a very expensive project. I guess the best way to say is still in very detailed discussions with our State Department of Transportation and also Georgia Tech, given how this project would impact their operations, particularly on the west side of the interstate. I believe the MCP team, which is its own staff, will be coming back to the public with some public updates shortly, so stay tuned on that. Homelessness. Mention of aggressive homelessness or aggressive panhandling. Anytime you see or are victim of an aggressive panhandler where you feel threatened, call 911, call Midtown Blue right after you call 911. A lot of time we will be the first responder for those calls. That's 404-817-0500. If you've seen someone who's in distress or having a mental health crisis, you can now dial 311, and that will route to the Policing Alternatives Division or the PAD program. In our experience, that can take a while. So call Midtown Blue immediately after that, the same number I just gave you, and we will likely be the first on the scene, and we'll do our best to do an assessment. There's a question about homeless encampments, particularly on freeways. We're not aware of any in Midtown. We've seen some that are further south, outside of Midtown. Sometimes tents crop up overnight. Rarely do we not see them the very next morning and then address them. But again, if you've got a question or a concern, let us know, and we'll address it. Let's see. Carl, I saw a question about Emory University Hospital, the Winship Cancer Building. You want to give an update on that?
Sure. Yeah, that project keeps moving forward. It should be a great building to help a lot of people in terms of their medical issues, especially cancer related. And we look forward to having it open. Right now, it is scheduled to open about a year out, next fall, plus or minus a couple months from a year out. But that's what they project, and that's what we've last heard. So that's what I can share with that. And to add to Kevin's point before, if a closure is related to construction within Midtown or anywhere else in the city of Atlanta, the city did pass in 2019 a document that is their policy for pedestrian accommodations within those work zone areas. So again, as Kevin said, if you see something, say something in terms of that, and we look into it, and hopefully we can get it fixed or improved very shortly.
Thanks, Carl. So we covered a lot of ground. As this sort of sinks in the coming days, if you've got additional questions, email us, info@midtownatl.com, and we'll get back to you. If you put a question into the initial registration and you don't feel like it got answered, and I don't think we got to all of them, we will send you a response if we have your email address for the registration. So expect something back from us on that. And do please stay tuned. We're right up against it now, but we are going to have just a short 3-question survey. We want to know how these webinars work for you. If you've got suggestions in terms of how to make them more newsy or more valuable. We talked pretty fast today and covered a lot, but if you got ideas on how we can make them better, we'd like to hear about it. And then lastly, if you've got thoughts in terms of how you might like to be involved in our work, this is something we're really going to try and emphasize in 2022. We've got this wonderful district with residents and workers that have a lot of interest and a lot of talents and a lot of passion. We'd like to find a way that's practical to plug you into some of the work that we're doing, particularly as we're trying to bring some real near-term enhancements and a sense of delight to this place. So let us know your thoughts, and anytime you'd like to talk further, we're here. So thank you for joining us. It's 6:15. We nailed it in 45 minutes. Onward. Thanks, Midtown.